You know what's wild, man? Andrew Tate converting to Islam, that's a big move. People don't realize how deep that is. It's not just some social media stunt. It's a complete shift in how you see the world, how you live your life. And the internet can argue all day, but when a guy who lived that wild lifestyle suddenly goes all in on discipline, structure, and faith, it makes you stop and think, what does he know that the rest of us are missing? Tate's whole brand was freedom, cars, money, women. Then he walks away from all that noise and chooses something that demands total discipline. And that right there is fascinating because most people spend their entire lives chasing that exact dream. The fast cars, the exotic vacations, the beautiful women, the giant houses, it's the poster of success we're taught to want. You grow up thinking, if I just get this car, or if I just make this amount of money, I'll finally be happy. But here's a guy who had all of it, who actually lived in the reality that most men only fantasize about, and he chose to step away. He didn't lose it. He didn't get it taken away. He voluntarily stepped away from it because he found something he considered more powerful than all of that. And that's the part that blows people's minds, because discipline doesn't look sexy on Instagram. Nobody's making highlight reels of waking up early, keeping your head down, resisting temptations, staying committed to a code. There's no flashy angle in a picture of you saying no to things you once thought you couldn't live without. But in reality, that's where real freedom is. Think about it. Freedom isn't being able to say yes to every desire. Freedom is being strong enough to say no when you know it doesn't serve you. Imagine you're at a party. Music's blasting, people are drinking, smoking, doing whatever. Everyone looks like they're having fun, but half of them are going to wake up the next morning feeling sick, broke, or full of regret. Now picture the one guy who says no, who leaves early, who goes home, sleeps well, wakes up clear, minded, and puts in work the next morning. In the moment he looks boring, maybe even out of place. But give it a year, give it 5 years. Who's really ahead? The one who lived for the short bursts of fun, or the one who chose discipline? That's the shift Tate made. His brand used to be about showing how far he could stretch indulgence, how much he could consume, how many things he could own. But the moment he embraced discipline, he sent a message louder than any of his cars or mansions ever could. It was like saying, I've tasted what the world calls success, and it's not enough. I need something deeper, something structured, something that keeps me grounded when the noise gets too loud. And here's the thing. Most people are scared to admit that. We chase and chase, hoping the next achievement will fill the hole inside. We tell ourselves just one more promotion, just one more relationship, just one more trip, and I'll feel complete. But when someone who already had all of that stands up and says, no, there's something more valuable in discipline, it forces you to rethink what you're doing with your life. It's uncomfortable because it shatters the illusion that happiness lives at the end of the shopping list. Discipline looks like a prison from the outside, but once you're inside it, you realize it's the only way to actually be free. If you're a slave to your cravings, you're not free. If you can't say no to food, drinks, distractions, or even your own laziness, then your freedom is an illusion. You're chained, not by society, not by politics, but by yourself. But the guy who practices discipline, he can walk through life without being pulled in every direction. He's not tossed around by impulse. He's not addicted to approval. He's not defined by material things. And that's what Tate tapped into. He saw that the endless chase for pleasure was actually a trap. Sure, the trap had a gold roof and leather seats, but it was still a trap, and he chose to walk out of it into something that demanded he become stronger, more controlled, more intentional. It's like choosing to train every day when you don't have to, or deciding to face the cold shower instead of staying comfortable in warm water. It's a test of the mind, and it's a way to grow in ways most people never will. You can see this lesson everywhere in daily life. Take a guy who eats whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Pizza, burgers, soda. It feels good in the moment. Now put him next to someone who eats clean, trains every day, and keeps his body sharp. At 20, maybe the difference isn't big. But at 40, at 50, one of them is strong, healthy, and moving through life with energy, while the other is tired in pain and wishing he'd made better choices. Discipline is the invisible investment that pays off when nothing else does. Or look at money. The guy who spends his paycheck the moment it hits his account versus the guy who saves, invests, and lives below his means. The spender feels rich for a week. The saver feels secure for a lifetime. One of them is trapped in the cycle. The other one has built a life where he doesn't have to fear what's next. This is why Tate's move is so powerful. Because it's not about losing freedom. It's about finally understanding what freedom actually is. It's not about cars, money, or women. It's about being untouchable in your mind and unshakable in your spirit. And that only comes when you embrace discipline over desire, structure over chaos, purpose over pleasure. People think it's just about rules, but for him, looks like he found purpose. And when a man finds purpose, he becomes dangerous in a different way. Because purpose changes everything. When you don't have purpose, you're drifting. You wake up and you're just reacting to whatever the world throws at you. The alarm rings, you hit snooze, you drag yourself out of bed, you go to work you don't love, you scroll through your phone, you binge something at night, and then you repeat it all over again. That's not living, that's existing. And most people don't even realize they're stuck in that loop because it's normal, it's what everyone else is doing. But when a man finds purpose, suddenly the fog clears. He wakes up with a reason, and that reason gives him power that no amount of money or influence can replace. Purpose makes him unstoppable, because now his life isn't just about comfort or pleasure, it's about mission. Think of a soldier who has a cause. He's not out there fighting for a paycheck. He's fighting because he believes in something bigger than himself. And when you believe in something bigger, you stop being afraid of small things. Criticism, pain, obstacles, they don't shake you because you're locked in on that higher target. Look at sports. Imagine a fighter who just wants the money versus a fighter who's doing it to prove something to himself, to honor his family, to show the world he can't be broken. Who's scarier in the ring? The guy chasing a paycheck or the guy fighting with fire in his chest? Money buys gloves and training camps. But purpose is what keeps a man standing when his face is bleeding and his legs are giving out. Purpose is the difference between quitting and finding one more punch when your body says you're done. In daily life, it's the same. Take two men working the same job. One's there just to collect the check. The other's there because he's building something for his family, for his kids, for a future. Who's putting in more focus, more discipline, more drive? The one with purpose. Purpose makes the grind feel meaningful. It transforms boredom into duty, struggle into growth, obstacles into stepping stones. And that's why it makes you dangerous. Because when the average person lives on autopilot, a man with purpose sticks out. He moves differently. He talks differently. He carries an energy that people can't ignore. Even his silence feels heavier because you can feel he's operating with intent. It's like the difference between a candle and a wildfire. A candle gives a little light and goes out with the wind. A wildfire consumes everything in its path because it has fuel, direction, and intensity. That's what a man with purpose looks like. He can't be contained. Think about how many people lose themselves because they never discover what they're living for. They drown in distractions, chasing likes on social media, trying to impress people they don't even care about. But when you meet someone with real purpose, you can feel the difference. They don't need validation. They don't need to prove themselves through shallow things because their mission validates them every single day. And here's the raw truth: purpose isn't about comfort. In fact, it usually requires sacrifice. It demands you give up some pleasures. It demands discipline. It demands consistency. And that's exactly why most people run from it. They'd rather stay safe, distracted, entertained than confront the pain of building something real. But the ones who embrace it, they become rare, and rarity is always powerful. Picture a man training in the gym. Most people stop when they're tired. The guy with purpose keeps going because his mind isn't focused on the pain, it's focused on the mission. Maybe it's to rebuild his life. Maybe it's to set an example for his son. Maybe it's to prove everyone wrong. That purpose drives him past the point where motivation dies. And that's what makes him dangerous, because motivation fades, but purpose endures. Even in small things, you can see it. A person with no purpose wastes their days, complains about traffic, complains about Mondays, complains about how unfair life is. A person with purpose can be stuck in the same traffic, but he's listening to something that fuels his mind. He's using the time to reflect, to plan, to get better. Same situation, two completely different outcomes, and the difference is purpose. When a man finds it, he becomes someone others can't predict and can't control. The world loses its grip on him. He doesn't bend to trends. He doesn't fold under pressure. He doesn't beg for approval because he already knows where he's going. And when you know where you're going, every distraction becomes irrelevant. You become locked in, focused, and sharp in a way that unsettles people who are drifting without direction. Because deep down, they wish they had that same fire, that same clarity, that same unshakable drive. This isn't a casual change. You don't just wake up one morning and decide this. It means he's been searching for something deeper, because big transformations in life never happen overnight. People see the surface and think it's sudden, but the truth is, it's always the result of years of questioning, of wrestling with yourself, of realizing that the life you built doesn't answer the questions that haunt you at night. A man doesn't just abandon comfort and fame for no reason. He does it because the emptiness inside got too loud to ignore. Think about it in daily life. How many times have you gotten something you thought would make you happy? Maybe a new phone, a new car, or even a relationship, and for a while it feels good, but then the excitement fades. You're back to the same restless state, wondering what's next. That cycle keeps repeating because material things or shallow wins never fully satisfy the deeper hunger inside. When someone like Tate, who had everything the world screams at us to want, chooses to walk away, it's not out of boredom, it's because he hit that wall where the old answers stopped working. And when the old answers stop working, you start digging deeper. You start searching for something that can't be bought. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. At first you're motivated by the view, the fresh air, the excitement. But the higher you climb, the harder it gets, the thinner the air becomes. And then you reach the top, you see the view, and for a moment it's incredible. But after a while you realize the view isn't enough, because once you've seen it, it becomes normal too. That's when you understand the mountain was never the point. It was the journey, the struggle, the growth you experienced on the way up. But if you didn't learn from the climb, the peak feels empty. Tate climbed that mountain of money, fame, status, and he realized the peak wasn't giving him what he thought it would. That's when you start searching for a mountain that actually means something, and the search is uncomfortable because it forces you to question the life you built. Most people run from that discomfort. They double down on distractions, buy more things, chase more thrills, anything to avoid facing the silence of their own mind. But the few who lean into it, who sit with the questions, who admit that their soul is starving for something real, those are the ones who find a deeper path. Take daily routines as an example. A man wakes up, grabs his phone, scrolls for an hour, eats whatever junk is easy, rushes to work, complains about traffic, counts the hours until he can go home, and then numbs himself with TV or games. Repeat, he never pauses to ask, is this it? Is this what life is supposed to be? And because he never asks, he never changes. But the guy who wakes up and says, no, I want more than this cycle, I need a reason to wake up with fire in my chest. He's the one who starts searching, and that search is the beginning of transformation. You can see it with people who hit rock bottom. Maybe it's losing a job, maybe it's getting sick, maybe it's losing someone they love. Pain has a way of ripping away the illusions, of forcing you to see what actually matters. And once you taste that clarity, it's hard to go back. Suddenly the things you thought were so important feel shallow, and you start looking for something that can't be shaken by loss or disappointment. That's when you start asking the bigger questions. What am I living for? What's the point? What gives all of this meaning? And once a man starts asking those questions, he can't unask them. That's why it's never a casual change. It's not like switching your diet or trying a new workout routine. It's a shift at the core of who you are. It's you saying, I can't live the way I did before. I need something real, something unbreakable, something that grounds me no matter what storm comes. That kind of decision is forged in the silence. In the nights when you stare at the ceiling wondering why all the success feels hollow, in the mornings when you realize the life you built doesn't inspire you anymore. That's what makes this kind of transformation powerful, because it's not built on hype, it's not for show, it's not about impressing anyone. It's about finding an anchor when everything else feels like it's drifting, and when a man finds that anchor, you can feel it in how he carries himself. His words are different, his presence is different. Even his discipline is different, because now he's not just living for himself. He's living for a mission he discovered in that search for something deeper. The internet mocks him. But think about it. How many guys with his success are still miserable? Maybe he found an anchor most people never find. Because here's the truth: people love to laugh at what they don't understand. It's easier to mock a man changing his life than to question why he changed it. It's safer to point fingers than to look in the mirror and ask yourself if you're truly happy. The internet thrives on that kind of noise, but beneath it is a real question. Why would someone who had everything walk away from it unless he realized that everything wasn't enough? Look around and you'll see it everywhere. Celebrities who seem to have the perfect life, millions in the bank, mansions, cars, fame, adoration, yet they're depressed, addicted, broken on the inside. You see it in entrepreneurs who built empires, sold their companies, cashed out with more money than they could ever spend, and then admit they feel empty, restless, unsatisfied. You see it in athletes who reach the peak of their careers, stand on the podium with medals and trophies, and then spiral into depression because they realize the applause doesn't last forever. What does that tell you? It tells you that success without an anchor doesn't save you, it destroys you. And what is that anchor? It's something deeper than money, deeper than status, deeper than anything people can give you. It's purpose, it's belief, it's a system that keeps you steady when the world is pulling you in every direction, because the storm never stops. There will always be critics, always be distractions, always be temptations trying to shake you. If you don't have an anchor, you drift. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually you lose yourself in the chaos. Think of a ship at sea, a massive, powerful vessel with all the latest technology, radar, engines, and navigation. But if it doesn't drop anchor, the waves can push it anywhere. It doesn't matter how strong the ship looks. Without that anchor, it's at the mercy of the storm. That's how most people live. They look strong on the outside. Good job. Nice house, smiling pictures, but inside they're drifting. The waves of life push them into anxiety, depression, regret. They chase one thing after another, hoping it'll finally give them peace. But nothing sticks because they never found that anchor. Now imagine the difference when you have one. No matter how strong the wind blows, no matter how wild the waves crash, you stay grounded. You're not tossed around by every trend, every opinion, every emotion. You stand firm because your anchor holds you down to something bigger than yourself. That's what Tate might have found. He had the storm, the fame, the controversy, the money, and it was pulling him in every direction. But now it looks like he dropped anchor into something solid, something that doesn't vanish when the cameras turn off. And here's the part that should wake people up: if a man who had all the things you think would make you happy still went looking for more, what does that mean for you? If he realized that the world's definition of success wasn't enough, what makes you think it will be enough for you? Maybe you're chasing the same dream. Better job, bigger house, flashier car, hoping it'll silence the emptiness. But what if you're climbing the wrong ladder? What if you're pouring your life into things that won't hold you when the storm comes? Take a simple example. Imagine two men at night. One is lying in his luxury apartment, scrolling through social media, surrounded by everything he ever wanted, but he can't sleep because his mind won't stop racing. The other is lying in a small, modest home, maybe nothing fancy at all, but he's at peace because he knows what he believes in, he knows who he is, he knows what his life means. Who's richer? The world says the first man, but deep down we all know it's the second, because peace is wealth, stability is wealth, an anchor is wealth, and you can see it in your own life. Think about the times you've been lost in stress or comparison, scrolling through feeds, watching other people's highlight reels, feeling like you're behind. That's drifting without an anchor. But the moments when you knew who you were, when you had a clear reason to wake up, when you felt grounded even if nothing else was perfect, those were the moments you were unshakable. That's the power of an anchor. So when the internet mocks a man for choosing discipline over chaos, for choosing stability over endless noise, what they don't see is that maybe he found the one thing most people will spend their whole lives searching for and never discover. Maybe he found the anchor that gives him peace in a world built on distraction. And that's why, for the first time, instead of looking lost in the storm, he looks like a man who finally knows where he's standing. It's going to trigger people because it's counter to Western culture. Discipline, prayer, self-control, those three things sound simple, but in a world built on instant gratification, they feel like a revolution. Because let's be honest, most of Western culture today is built on the idea of doing whatever you want, whenever you want, without consequences. Eat what you crave, buy what you desire, watch whatever entertains you, live in constant distraction, and it's all packaged as freedom. But in reality, it's a trap. Because if you can't control yourself, you're not free. You're a prisoner to your impulses. Discipline flips that entire script. It's saying no when everything around you screams yes. It's choosing to wake up early when the world tells you to stay comfortable in bed. It's grinding on your craft while others are scrolling aimlessly. And here's the irony. People see discipline as restrictive, but in truth it's the gateway to freedom. Because the man who disciplines himself isn't controlled by cravings. He controls them. He doesn't depend on mood, on environment, on culture. He chooses. And that scares people because deep down they wish they had that kind of control, but most don't. Then there's prayer. Not the shallow version people imagine, but the real act of stopping everything, grounding yourself, humbling yourself, and reconnecting with something bigger than your ego. In a culture obsessed with being busy, with constant noise and constant consumption, prayer is like a rebellion. It says, I don't need the world's approval right now. I don't need entertainment. I don't need to escape. I just need stillness, clarity, and connection. And that makes people uncomfortable because it exposes how restless they are. It highlights the truth that all their distractions are just ways to avoid silence. Self-control ties it all together. Think about how rare true self-control is today. How many people can sit at a table full of junk food and not touch it? How many can stay calm when insulted instead of exploding in anger? How many can save money when everyone else is spending to impress? Self-control is power because it means you're not reacting to life. You're choosing your response. But in a culture built on indulgence, self-control looks strange, even threatening. Imagine this in daily life. You're out with friends, everyone orders drinks, and you say no, they laugh, they pressure, they mock, but you stay firm. On the surface, they're teasing you, but inside, they're unsettled because your self-control exposes their lack of it. Or think of someone scrolling endlessly through social media at 2 a.m., losing sleep, wasting energy, and then they see you waking up at 5 a.m. to work out, meditate, and plan your day. It annoys them because your discipline reminds them of their own weakness. This is why it triggers people. It forces them to face what they've been avoiding. It's easy to live in a culture where everyone tells you indulgence is normal. It's easy to believe that happiness comes from saying yes to every urge. But when someone stands up and says no, happiness comes from restraint, from order, from focus. It shakes the entire illusion. And illusions don't like being shaken. Look at it this way. Western culture teaches you to chase pleasure, but pleasure always fades. You buy the car, you love it for a month, then it becomes normal. You eat the food, enjoy it for 10 minutes, then it's gone. You chase likes online, feel a rush for a moment, then need more. It's a cycle without end. But discipline, prayer, and self-control give you something pleasure never can, peace. And peace doesn't fade. Peace stays when the car loses its shine, when the food is gone, when the likes stop coming. Daily life proves this over and over. The student who parties every night feels free, but fails exams and loses opportunities. The student who studies, sacrifices, and controls their urges feels restricted at first, but later walks across the stage with pride, ready for a future. The worker who spends every paycheck feels rich for a weekend, but lives in stress and debt. The worker who saves, invests, and shows self-control feels poor at first, but builds a life of security. The difference isn't luck, it's discipline. And it's no wonder it triggers people, because when someone practices discipline, prayer, and self-control, they shine a light on how much of our so-called freedom is just slavery in disguise. They show that true power isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about mastering yourself so deeply that nothing else can control you. And in a culture that runs on consumption, that kind of self-mastery isn't just rare, it's revolutionary. And honestly, whether you agree with him or not, you can't ignore the fact that he's reinventing himself in a way most men are too scared to even try. Because let's be real, reinvention is terrifying. Most men spend their whole lives hiding behind the mask they created for themselves. The mask of success, the mask of toughness, the mask of being the guy who has it all figured out. They build this identity brick by brick, and then they cling to it because they're afraid of what will happen if they let it go. Andrew Tate had built one of the strongest masks in the world. Fast cars, wealth, fame, dominance. And then he decided to strip it down and walk into something completely different that takes more courage than most people will ever understand. Think about how many men are stuck in jobs they hate, but they stay because it's comfortable, because change is scary. They wake up every morning, hit snooze, drag themselves out of bed, complain about their boss, complain about their life, and then do it all again the next day. They dream of something more, but the fear of starting over paralyzes them. Now imagine choosing to reinvent yourself publicly in front of millions of people who are waiting to judge your every move. That's a level of boldness that can't be faked. Reinvention means admitting that the old version of you wasn't enough. And that's what scares people the most, because it feels like saying I was wrong. Nobody likes to admit that. Nobody likes to look at their own reflection and say, I need to change. It's easier to stay the same, even if it's killing you inside, than to start again from scratch. But when a man dares to reinvent himself, he sends a message louder than any speech could. Growth is more important than pride. Look at it through a daily example. Imagine a man who's been unhealthy his entire life. He eats junk food, never works out, laughs at the idea of the gym. One day he decides enough is enough. He shows up, he starts small, people mock him. They say he'll quit in a week, but he keeps going. A year later, he's unrecognizable, stronger, healthier, more confident. That's reinvention. And notice how people react. At first they laugh, then they doubt, then they respect, because deep down they know he did what they were too scared to do. Reinventing yourself isn't just about physical change, it's about mental transformation. It's about saying, I refuse to let my past dictate my future. I refuse to be trapped by the image the world has of me. Most men can't handle that pressure. They'd rather live a lie than risk the criticism that comes with starting fresh. But the irony is the criticism fades and the growth remains. Look at athletes who retire from their sport. So many of them fall apart after retirement because their entire identity was tied to being an athlete. When that's gone, they feel lost. But the few who reinvent themselves, who become coaches, entrepreneurs, mentors, they thrive. They understood that life isn't about clinging to one version of yourself forever. It's about constantly evolving. Or think about someone who's always been known as the funny guy in his group. Everyone expects him to be the clown, the entertainer. But what if deep down he wants to be serious, to build something meaningful, to take a different path? The fear of disappointing people keeps him locked in a role he's outgrown. Reinvention means breaking that role, no matter how uncomfortable it makes others, because you know your growth matters more than their expectations. And that's why Tate's reinvention is so striking. It's not about agreeing or disagreeing with him. It's about recognizing the courage it takes to tear down your old identity and step into something new. Most men would rather die clinging to a fake version of themselves than risk the unknown of transformation. But he chose the unknown. He chose to step into a path that demands humility, discipline, and vulnerability. The truth is, reinvention is available to everyone. The man stuck in a toxic relationship, the woman who feels trapped in a job, the person who's been living on autopilot for years. You all have the power to break free and create a new version of yourself, but it requires facing fear head on. It requires ignoring the voices that will mock you, the ones that will say you've changed as if that's a bad thing. It requires understanding that staying the same when you know you need to grow is the real failure. Most men dream of change but never act on it. They fantasize about quitting their job, about getting in shape, about starting something new, but they never take the leap because they're terrified of looking foolish. But the ones who do, the ones who embrace reinvention, they inspire the rest of the world, because deep down everyone knows how hard it is to start over. And when they see someone actually do it, it shakes them awake. And that's what this whole moment represents. Whether you like him or not, whether you agree with his choices or not, you can't deny the raw courage of reinvention. It's the reminder that at any moment, you can decide the person you were yesterday is not the person you have to be tomorrow. It's the reminder that growth requires letting go, that evolution demands risk, and that the scariest step is always the one that leads you to the version of yourself you were meant to become. Every story that inspires us, every legend that stands the test of time, begins with a decision to change. Not a small change, not the kind of change you brag about for a week and then abandon, but a deep transformation that rewrites the course of your life. People forget that greatness isn't about staying comfortable. It's about being willing to destroy the version of yourself that no longer serves you. It's about walking into the fire of uncertainty and trusting that on the other side, you will emerge sharper, stronger, and more alive than ever before. And that's why moments like this matter, because they remind us that life isn't about clinging to what you've been. It's about having the courage to chase what you can become. The world will laugh. The world will mock. The world will question. But at the end of the day, the world doesn't live your life. You do. And if you let their voices be louder than your own conviction, you will die having lived someone else's story instead of writing your own. The truth is simple. Most people are afraid to start over. They fear judgment. They fear failure. They fear stepping outside of the role they've been assigned. But fear is nothing more than the border between who you are and who you're meant to be. The only way to conquer it is to move through it. You cannot negotiate with fear. You cannot wait for it to leave. You face it, you walk through it, and you take back your power with every step. Every man, every woman listening to this right now has felt that pull inside, that whisper that says, you are meant for more. And most people silence it. They bury it under excuses, under comfort, under distraction. But those who listen to it, those who follow it, those are the ones who change everything. Those are the ones who prove that the greatest power a human can have is the power to reinvent themselves. Remember this, your past does not define you, your mistakes do not own you, and your critics do not control you. What defines you is the choice you make right now, the decision to stop waiting for the perfect moment and start creating it. Growth never comes without risk. Greatness never comes without sacrifice. The life you dream of will demand a version of you that does not yet exist, and the only way to meet that version is to shed the skin of who you used to be. People love to say change is impossible, but that's a lie told by those who were too afraid to try. History is written by those who dared to change, who dared to defy expectation, who dared to say, this is not where my story ends. Every great achievement started as a decision to walk away from comfort and into discipline, to walk away from indulgence and into self-control, to walk away from fear and into purpose. So the question is not whether reinvention is possible. The question is whether you will dare to chase it. Will you continue to let your life be dictated by what others expect? Or will you step into the arena of transformation and prove that you are more than your past, more than your failures, more than the labels they put on you? Don't be the man who looks back and says, I could have been more. Be the man who takes the risk, who bears the weight, who finds the courage to grow. Don't be the woman who stays silent in her own life. Be the woman who rewrites her story with fire and conviction. Because at the end of it all, comfort will fade, pleasure will fade, approval will fade. What remains is who you became, the battles you fought, the discipline you built, and the purpose you lived with. And that is what makes a life unforgettable. So let the world laugh, let the critics talk, let the doubters doubt. None of them live in your skin, none of them carry your soul, none of them walk your path. This is your life, your mission, your chance to become something greater than you ever imagined. The chains of fear are weaker than they look, the walls of comfort are thinner than they feel, and the door to transformation is already open. Step through it, because the world doesn't need more people who stay the same. The world needs more people brave enough to change.